let's transition over to this. So this was a big story over the last week, and I really want to pay attention to it because it's another case of where, investors in PulseChain, investors in Hex may have one interest or idea in what might be best for the ecosystem. And then days later, Richard Hart kind of comes and throws cold water on the whole thing. Just kind of a pattern that we've seen here and there. This one I find way more entertaining than the Hex one, though. So there's been an effort, and we were going to get into this a bit last week, but it really picked up legs this over the course of last week. But efforts within the community, Crypto Coffee, I know, is spearheading it. I know Buck from Fame and all that stuff made a contribution, and I'm sure there's others that I just don't know. But there's been this huge coordinated effort to get Pulse listed, the Pulse token listed on the MEXC exchange. Many people are not familiar with that exchange. I think it's because US, you cannot access it, and it's just available in certain countries. It is a top 20 exchange from what I've heard by volume. And I've heard of it before just from being, this deep into crypto and everything. But not an uber popular one, but it is still, it would be a significant thing for Pulse to be on there. So there's been this effort to potentially get it on there. I think it is about $123 or so, or $123,000 needed. If it was $123, that'd be pretty interesting. But $123K to get it listed on there. And at last check last week sometime, they had at least 30K of it. And some of these, different entities that ran these big sacrifice phases on PulseChain were a lot of the ones contributing to the effort. So again, it's not available in the US, that exchange. We'll get into Richard's point on it in a minute. But my question to you was just going to be, before I even saw Richard's last week, was, is it good or bad? I mean, what do you think about the potential of this? Because you've got the DeFi purists who are like, hell no, there's no point in doing that. Middlemen, yada, 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 and other great points that I'm sure I haven't said too. And then there's other people that are like, look, you and I particularly talked about somebody's response to Richard over the weekend about this, but there's other people that will say, hey, and I see the merits in this for sure. Why not have just the Pulse token on some of these exchanges, so it's even easier for people just to get into the ecosystem? You buy a little bit of Pulse on there, native Pulse, and then you can send it straight to PulseChain if that's possible. If it's not that, and you're buying like wrapped Pulse where you still have to bridge it, at that point I wouldn't even understand the point almost of an exchange. But there's people that think both ways, and I understand both ways. So first off, Ewok, I'll just say, fundamentally, before we look at Richard's post on it, what do you think about this? Because it's a complicated topic, I think.
I'm only a fan if you're going to get on one of the top three. Coinbase, Crypto.com, Kraken, Gemini. Mm-hmm. That's four. One of those main ones.
KuCoin.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. They're
in trouble now too. Later. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the problem is you have to give them liquidity, right? It just doesn't make sense, because then you become a target. People don't own the coins. They never put them on the blockchain. They're defeating the purpose of what DeFi is about. And, you say real DeFi, that's what PulseChain is, with all the validators and all the organic growth that we've kind of developed and come along the way of the Hex, and that mentality, goes out the window when you talk about centralized exchanges. It really does. Now, does it provide that much onboarding? Well, a lot of times the liquidity is nowhere near what it's like on chain. So you're not getting a good deal on price, especially for big buyers. The big buyers are going to come in the right way and get it from PulseX, or one of the most liquid, ways to do it. So it's going to be little fish. Does it outweigh the cost? I don't know. I would rather see somebody just take that 150 grand and buy a bunch of tokens. Honestly, I really think that's a better option, because, again, you said it earlier, you can't even use that exchange in the United States. I realize it's not all United States. There's a lot of Richard Hart fans out there around the world that are in areas that could use it. I just think it promotes bad habits, and
Right.
I'm not a fan, but there are people that are, and I'll support their efforts. I'm not going to contribute to it. I can't use it, so it would make no sense for me to contribute to the cause at all. But I'm happy people are taking a stance, right? Crypto Coffee came back and said, "Yeah, I heard what Richard said, but we're still going to do it." I think there are some good things that can come of it. Well, that's great. I mean, I'll support the cause, but I'm not going to financially support it with my money. So only because it doesn't really, it doesn't interest me. I don't really like the idea. We still have a great opportunity, and when things are hard to buy, that opportunity is bigger. Once they start getting on these exchanges, and who cares about coin ranking listings and the
Right.
little things that I think they feel are a benefit, um, I don't know that they are. Not yet, not this early in the game. I think if we need to grow the community more grassroots a little bit longer before we start doing those type of things, and um, have it be a more dynamic type of thing where you're going to get on this one and this one and this one. Let's make a splash getting on 3 decent sized exchanges instead of pick one that, may not have the best security. It could go down. And that's another risk too, is it could get hacked. And then you've got all that pulse out there that's going to just get dumped,
Hmm.
because they hold them in hot wallets. So exchanges get hacked all the time. There's people that can't get out of them. There's a lot of problems that you don't have with DeFi. So, I feel like it just adds another layer of potential issues, and those outweigh the good that can come of it. That's my take on centralized exchanges. So,
Yeah, I hate to be a fence sitter, but I do see merits to both sides. Again, I'm with you. Like, if it would be one thing if this were Coinbase or something like that. And I just want to answer some of the things that some people are saying in response to this. So there's people saying that this shouldn't even be a community effort. Why isn't the founder doing this? We've already given so much money or whatever. It's like, well, because the community decided to do it. I mean, they weren't told to do it. They obviously, Richard doesn't have people working for him and nobody works for Richard or anything. They decided to do it on their own. So that's why that is, first off. And I, to that point, and I wanted to follow up on something you said. Credit to Coffee for sure, Crypto Coffee on his stream Sunday. He did double down on saying, "Hey, I still think it's worth doing, and we're going to do it." So
mhm.
I agree with you. Some of these people that like will read a Richard Hart tweet and I don't know, sell eHex down 80% in a day, are just lackeys. So credit to Coffee for. It's not like he took some hard stance against Richard. Just kudos to him. It's something he was already doing, and he's still doing it. So. But let's look at that Richard tweet. I'll see what day it was about the MEXC thing, which I sent it to you. I don't think he even mentions MEXC in it. We can just kind of surmise that this is what he's talking about. But he says, which exchanges have people had good experiences with, and which exchanges have people got jacked by? Do not click the links, blah, blah, blah. Unrelated. Something listings solves ranking sites lying about your market cap. It doesn't, regardless of what they tell you. Hex met CMC's CoinMarketCap's requirements, and it didn't matter. A lawsuit didn't fix it either yet, LOL, which is kind of what you were alluding to, Ewok.
Yeah.
And then there's some interesting comments on this that we can kind of look at here. But what did you think of just another thing like this where Richard kind of just throws cold water on this big kind of community effort that's been going on? I mean, I don't think he's not being mean or anything by this, but it's interesting to hear him come out and give his opinion on this, and it be such a I mean, really, I guess what he's saying here is you don't have good experiences with exchanges, and it's not going to help with coin ranking. So you agree with both those takes, I assume?
I do. I really do. Again, Richard's always been a fantastic marketer. He told us even when we were doing the NASCAR thing, it's not going to translate into sales. Like, it's not going to translate into new users. Now, I know they did onboard quite a bit that weekend at the race with the NASCAR and all that good stuff. Got ourselves into a video game, and there's been some cool things come of it. But again, he usually knows where the marketing choice is and which way to take it. So yeah, I'm going to listen to him. I mean, he's obviously far better at it than I am. So I would take his advice. But again, people are free to spend their money the way they want to. I think we could get behind Coast and make them even better. If we're going to do something like that, let's do it through the people that we already have. I think they would love if we purchased a bunch of liquidity through Coast once they get up and running, and just firm up a lot of those liquidity pools with the CST coin and the PulseChain and things like that. So that's my take on it. I agree with what he's saying. Yeah, I don't have anything that would jump out and say, I didn't read this link. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't look into that.
Text.
I think it's the coin. Yeah, it's the coin market cap thing. Yeah,
it is.
And I know I saw the other day Nuclear Herbs replied somewhere in this thread, and he said if anyone wanted the answer, an appeal to the Ninth Circuit was filed, but no appellate brief was ever submitted by the plaintiff appellate, so it died on the vine. The opening brief was due in June 23, and there's no record of it on the Ninth Circuit's docket. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened there. And I wanted to, and to your point, Coast is the very first reply that pops up on this to me too, and that's a great shout out with them. I mean, like, it's one thing to, we've talked so many times on this show about like getting into PulseChain, how to do it, the best ways to do it. We just did last week talking about the bridge Spark Swap. We've talked about the normal PulseChain bridge. There's buying USDC or DAI or ETH or whatever it may be on your favorite exchange, sending it to your wallet, bridging it over with one of those bridges. But then there is also Coast. And I think Coast does fill the role of an exchange the best of obviously of all these options. Like, if you're going to avoid having the tokens listed on an exchange, Coast is the best way to do it because it's the quickest way. I shouldn't say quickest. It's the most direct way that you can just, to steer a new person towards, which I think you've done actually, Ewok, to show them directly how to get on, because bridges may confuse people. Once you do a couple of run throughs, and especially when you use one like Spark Swap that is lightning fast, I think that people are going to say, oh, I was kind of being ridiculous thinking this was difficult. But Coast is a great example of like why an exchange may not be as important, I think, and especially with what they're doing now. We'll just tie in that topic with this. But I mean, they're in the midst of adding on according to them, over 10 banks to replace the one they were having issues with before. And according to a recent tweet, they said they should be days away from being back up and running. Being down obviously wasn't helpful in the interim, but necessary to get this working. So what do you make of that? Because I mean, a Coast is a fantastic alternative to being on any of these exchanges, I think.
Absolutely. And it wasn't even their fault. It was the banking provider that went out of business. Unfortunately, they didn't have a deep enough protocol with redundancies built into it. And they learned their lesson. So that's why they've upped it to like 10 people or 10 providers now, so that if one of them does go down, they've got plenty of others. I'm very excited about that. I think it's probably one of the cheapest ways. Granted, you do have to get some of the weight token and lock it up into the protocol, but you can get down as low as 1%. And I don't know of anywhere else that has a 1% fee to enter PulseChain. We figured out the other last week on some of the larger amounts. Was that Spark Swap?
Yeah, that's what actually. It's funny. Rebel Yell was just saying this in the chat. That's the one I just had highlighted here. Yep.
Yeah. So SparkSwap with the large sums, yes, I think we did. I think we determined at $500 it was about three or
Around
four
that mark.
percent,
Yeah.
3 or 4%. But if you tried like 5 grand, um, you're losing
10.
500. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
10%.
10%.
So
Mhm.
so it was very high, and yes, I don't recommend that. If you can get 1%, the more money that can stay within the system, the better everything is. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited for Coast. Like I said, they've always been good guys. They've always been good customer service, friendly people, that are willing to help out when there's an issue or whatever, just questions. There's always guys in their live chat type thing to answer questions right away, and I'm pulling for them. I heard they gave an estimate of 9 to 10 days. So rather than weeks, they said days. It's going to be more than a week, but not quite two. Hopefully,
Mhm.
um, on their ETA to be back up and running. So that's exciting.
Yeah.